So, when I say the word punk, what comes to mind? Probably loud guitars, right? Maybe mohawks, a whole lot of noise. But what if I told you it's actually a philosophy, a real legitimate philosophy? We're going to dive into a book today that makes that exact case, arguing there's a really deep system of thought hiding behind all that spectacle.
Okay, so this is our guide for today, The Philosophy of Punk by Craig O'Hara. And you know that title? It is not a metaphor. The book's central claim, which is pretty bold, is that punk is not just a music genre, it's a whole coherent philosophy with actual answers, just kind of buried under all that feedback and fury.
So, right, if we just peel back the leather jackets, forget all the stereotypes for a second, what's actually left? I mean, what is the core philosophy holding this entire movement together? Well, according to O'Hara, the key to unlocking punk, it's not found in the music at all. Nope. It actually starts with a feeling. A really widespread, deeply human feeling that something, somewhere in the modern world, is just fundamentally broken. Okay, so before we can even get to the philosophy, we gotta deal with the stereotype first. We have to push past that caricature of punk that, let's be honest, we've all been sold. Yeah, this is the image, right? The one the media absolutely loves. The chaotic mosh pit, this blur of which just looks like pure aggression. And sure, it's exciting, it's really easy to package and sell. But it's also totally one-dimensional. And that's O'Hara's whole point. If you only focus on this, you're missing, well, you're missing everything. So here's the absolute key takeaway. Punk isn't a style you just adopt, like a jacket or a haircut. It's a reaction to something. It's an effect, not a cause. It's basically a symptom of a much, much bigger problem. And what is that problem? What's the root cause that this entire philosophy sprouts from? It's a feeling of deep societal alienation. O'Hara really grounds his whole argument in this one quote from the philosopher Charles Taylor, and it just perfectly nails this feeling of being adrift. To put it simply, it's the sense that the modern world has just sucked all the meaning out of our jobs, out of our lives, and it's left us feeling like cogs in a giant machine. So the book actually traces this feeling all the way back to the Industrial Revolution. You've got mass production, this endless drive for maximum efficiency, and it all creates a world where people feel, as the book says, atomized, like tiny, disconnected parts instead of a real community. We just inherit these massive impersonal systems, and somewhere along the way, we lose our power to create stuff, to find our own meaning. But here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when a whole bunch of people start feeling this same disconnect, and they start recognizing it in each other? Well, they don't just sit around and mope. They react. They get together, they form their own subcultures, all to find the meaning that mainstream society just isn't giving them. And punk? It's one of those subcultures. So, okay, if alienation is the problem, then punk proposes a solution. And it's not just about, yelling into a microphone to vent your frustrations. No, it's actually this surprisingly complete framework for building a whole new sense of meaning. Now, you're probably thinking this philosophy is just a bunch of anti-government slogans, right? Smash the state and all that. But the actual range of topics that punk tackles, it's honestly kind of startling. I mean, just look at this. It's not just vague anti-establishment stuff. We're talking about detailed political theory, like anarchism. It dives headfirst into huge social issues, from sexism and feminism to environmentalism. It even analyzes how the media misrepresents them and creates its own internal codes of conduct, like the whole straight edge movement. This is not just noise. This is a counterculture that is seriously grappling with some of the biggest issues out there. And the thing is, these ideas don't just stay in theory. They're not just debated in some back room. The whole point is to put the philosophy into practice by actually building real-world alternatives to the exact mainstream structures that made everyone feel so alienated to begin with. Punks even have their own word for this community they've built. They call it the scene. And it's not just some vague, cool-sounding word. It refers to a very real, tangible network of people, venues, zines, the whole infrastructure that makes up their world. It's a community built literally from the ground up. Even their language gets in on it, reflecting the philosophy. For instance, punks don't go to concerts, they go to shows. It seems like a tiny difference, right? But it's actually huge. The whole goal of a show is to smash that invisible wall between the band on the stage and the people in the crowd.
It's about creating a shared experience where everyone participates instead of just passively watching.
So the scene becomes this incredibly vital space. It's the place where all these big, complex ideas about politics and society get passed around. And it's also like a launch pad for trying to make real changes, starting with yourself and then pushing that change out into the wider world.
Okay, so if there's one single idea, one principle that ties all of this together, the music, the politics, the community, all of it has to be the do-it-yourself ethic, DIY.
And you want to know the most perfect example of this DIY spirit? It's the story of this very book we're talking about. The author, Craig O'Hara, he didn't sit around waiting for some big publisher to give him the green light.
Nope. The very first edition, it was literally made on, and this is his own quote, a shitty copy machine. He then personally, by hand, drilled holes into every single copy and then stuck them together with binder rings. Think about that. The point was never about it being perfect. The point was about getting the ideas out there into the world by any means necessary.
And just look at what happened. From this little hand-drilled, photocopied zine, the ideas in this book spread so far that it was eventually translated and published all over the world. We're talking places like Lithuania and China. That right there is the power of the DIY ethic. You just start with what you've got and you build from there. This quote from O'Hara just sums up the whole thing perfectly. Write your own book, put out your own record, stop complaining. See, punk isn't about just complaining. It's a direct challenge. It's saying, hey, if the culture you were handed isn't working for you, then stop whining about it and go build your own. And ultimately, that's the real takeaway here. Punk is so much less a style of music you listen to and so much more a roadmap. It's a roadmap for anyone out there who feels disconnected. And it offers you both a philosophy and a set of tools to go build something meaningful, entirely on your own terms. Which kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. Forget the music for a second. Just focus on that core idea, responding to that feeling of alienation by creating something new. So the question I'll leave you with is this. If you felt that same disconnect from the world around you, what would you create?